There's all kinds of passages about how he has a crush on Amanda already. Makes sense. They're gonna get married later, but whatever. So... Hey guys, what's up? It's Julie the Bibliophile, and for the 50 gajillionth time, I have decided to reread the Kingdom Keepers series. Probably about once a year, I sit down and say, hey, I'm gonna reread Kingdom Keepers. And then I get about through this first book, maybe sometimes get through the second book, and then I stop because something else comes up, or I get too busy, and then a year passes, and then I say I'm gonna reread it again, but then I've forgotten everything again, and I have to start from book one again. So the furthest I ever got in a reread was probably in 2015, which was the 10th anniversary of the series, and I think that was the first time that I really seriously said, I'm gonna reread these books. You know, when the first series was still coming out, I would always reread the previous book, like the week before the new one came out, so to jog my memory, to prepare for the next book. But when 2015 rolled around and it was the 10th anniversary, at that point, everything was out except the last two. So at that point, you know, The Return was out, but we were waiting for Legacy of Secrets and Disney at Last. And that was the first year that I really sat down and said, I'm gonna reread this series. And that was also the furthest that I ever got in a reread. In 2015, I got all the way through the first 3 books, and then I started book 4, and that's when I stopped. But I went to Disney with it, and I got Ariel to sign my 4th book, and I think that is the coolest thing. So if you don't know about the Kingdom Keepers, you should. But the Kingdom Keepers is my absolute favorite book series in the whole wide world, probably my favorite fictional story in the whole wide world. It was probably the first series that really got me into young adult fiction, even though it is a middle grade novel. Like, I read this around like 7th, 8th grade for the first time, which is also when I was reading Hunger Games and Divergent, and made the transition from, you know, like Dear Dumb Diary and that kind of stuff into young adult fiction, which is still what I read today, so it does hold a very special place in my heart. But it holds a special place in my heart for a lot of reasons, and I just love it a lot. And if you don't know, The Kingdom Keepers is a book about a group of kids, these 5 kids, plus 2 more, but that comes in a little bit later. They become holographic tour guide hosts for Walt Disney World, and then they wake up in Walt Disney World as the holograms in their sleep, and they find out that they have been tasked with saving the world from the Disney villains, who are real and are trying to take over not only Disney World, but the whole world. And these 5 kids, later 7 kids, gotta stop it. So if you haven't read Kingdom Keepers and like you want to, which you should want to because they're amazing, I suggest leaving this video now because this is a reread discussion and it's gonna get very, very spoilery in here very, very fast. So go get a copy of Kingdom Keepers, read the first book, and then come back here and join me. Bye! Okay, so for fans of the Kingdom Keepers who are here, I have reread this book so many times because, as I said, you know, I always start the series over like once a year and I only get through this one. So I have read Disney After Dark so many times, and yet somehow it is the book that I always forget the most about. And like, so every time I reread this book, I'm saying I don't remember this scene about the same scenes. Like all the other books, like, you know, I forget most of it, but I can tell you the major plot points. And this one, I can tell you like what rides they go on, and I can tell you that the Stonecutter's Quill exists. But I always forget, like, how everything happens. I forget specific scenes, I forget the plot structure, and the end, especially. I never, ever, ever remember the end. What makes that fun is that this book is always exciting to read, and it always, like, sucks me right in, just like I was reading it for the first time. Because in ways, it is like I'm reading it for the first time, because I don't remember anything that happened for the most part, except that, you know, they go on Small World, and Winnie the Pooh, and Big Thunder, and Splash, and they're trying to find the Stonecutter's Quill, and Maybeck gets captured and put into Space Mountain, and then Jez becomes Jess. That's about it. Like, that's all I got before I sit down to reread this book every time. This time I'm rereading the book, and I realized I didn't even remember how they found the Stonecutter's Quill. Like, I did not remember at all. I knew there was like an anagram that they had to solve. I do remember that, but I always forget about the glasses on the rides and the letters, and it's, oh god. So, before I get into little fun rereading tidbits and talking about how I feel about this book in general, I'm going to go through a quick summary of the plot, because I have heard a lot of people expressing that they do forget what happens in this book, and I think it's just because there's so much happening, especially at the end. But I'm going to go through the plot really quick, and then we'll talk about it.
So Finn wakes up in Magic Kingdom, and he sees Wayne, and Wayne doesn't really tell him about the Kingdom Keepers right there. He's just like, you've been chosen for something, and Finn's getting confused because he can see the characters because he's half character as a DHI, and Wayne can't see the characters, and then Wayne is just like, you gotta get the other 5 hosts together, and Finn goes and does that. So then he's at school talking to Dillard, telling Dillard about the dream, or what he thinks is a dream, and he starts talking to Amanda. There's all kinds of passages about how he has a crush on Amanda already. Makes sense, they're gonna get married later, but whatever. So then he has Amanda help him, goes to Magic Kingdom after school one day, because Amanda says her parents work at Magic Kingdom, even though we all know now that she's doing this through Wayne because she's an orphan. But they go into Magic Kingdom, they get pictures of the other DHIs, and then they start getting chased by Dapper Dans, who they think are security, or probably overtakers. They go through the haunted mansion, take the chicken exit, out of the haunted mansion, leave the park, we're moving on. So eventually they skip school and to try to find the other hosts. They go find Charlene, and then they cross over the first time with more than one of them there, and it's Finn, Charlene, and Philby. This is when they get chased by the pirates, and Finn gets the laser burn on his arm. And then Wayne is like, I can't tell you until you have everybody here together. And Charlene's like, I'm not coming again until you tell us. So Wayne tells them the story, and then they get everybody together in VMK with the help of Amanda, and they all discuss in VMK whether or not they are going to do this. So after they all cross over for that first time, they say there's like this sports happening between all the middle schools at the Wide World of Sports. So they all go there and meet up there. This is when Finn encounters Jez for the first time, and Jez seems very enthralled with Finn. It's very weird, and all that happens. So then they go to Magic Kingdom again, they cross over, and they go on Small World to try and get letters to solve the Stonecutter's Quill fable, because they figure out on VMK, after Willa and Philby do research on it, that they need like sun, stone, cloud, and wind. And they go on Small World, they get attacked, they don't find anything, fine. Then there's this car wash, and Jez is talking to Maybach at the car wash, and she's talking to Finn and Amanda as well, and Finn and Amanda are riding their bikes, and Finn's like, do you ever think in rhyme? And Amanda's like, what? And he's like, do you ever think in rhyme? And she says that's a sign of witches. He's really creeped out by Amanda. There's also this whole plot going on where the DHI server will brown out, and they're fainting, getting cold in the middle of the day. Also, the Overtakers are stealing things to set up these cells underneath Pirates of the Caribbean. There's a whole lot going on. Then they go back to Magic Kingdom, and they go on Small World again. They split up. Charlene and Willa and Maybach go on Small World again with the 3D glasses on, and Finn and Philby go on Splash Mountain, almost die on Splash Mountain. Willa and Charlene come back, say Maybach's not with them, but they found the letters on Small World, and Finn and Philby find the letters on Splash Mountain. Then they realize they have to find Maybach. They sneak into Maybach's house, Jelly finds them, Jelly tells them what happened to Maybach, so then Finn says we have to get him tonight because he's going to go to the hospital tomorrow, and they go find Maybach in Space Mountain. That's when they realize that Jez is working with Maleficent. Then, after this, they don't want to cross over anymore because of what happened to Maybach, so Willa and Charlene go into the park as themselves and go on Winnie the Pooh. They find the letters on Winnie the Pooh. They try to solve the anagram, but they realize they can't. They need more letters, so Finn and Philby go on Big Thunder Mountain, get chased by the T-Rex on Big Thunder Mountain, find more letters. Then they solve the anagram, see it says, my first pen, and then they realize, and Charlene figures this out, or Charlene is trying to figure this out because Charlene is, like, good at anagrams, and then, like, they get frustrated, and the letters blow around, and they land in the shape of my first pen. So then they decide, they talk to Wayne, they realize that it's the Stonecutter's Quill, Walt's first pen, and they go to One Man's Dream to go steal the pen. And Finn steals the blueprints and the pens from Walt's office display in One Man's Dream, because he says, Walt says, I have plans for this place, and he realizes what that means. Then he feels cold on the door, the plans get stolen from him from under the door, and he runs out and he sees Amanda, and he thinks it's her, and then he doesn't want to talk to Amanda anymore. Then after that, they're at the Halloween party, and this is when they find the cells underneath Pirates of the Caribbean, because Amanda and Charlene faint because they have a spell put on them, and they encounter Jez and Maleficent, and they have cells set up under Pirates of the Caribbean to put cast members down there and try to take over the park, and it's creepy as hell. So then they leave, and Wayne tells them what they need to do, and he says you need to go into the park disguised as cast members so you can get into the utilidors in the tunnels underneath the Magic Kingdom, and Amanda is there with him, and he says Amanda's essential to this. So they go underground, and the plan is to trick Maleficent into getting the plans back. So they go to the computer server room where they say Maleficent is being held because she needs to be in the cold because she got weakened by Finn during the pirates chase. And so they go there, Finn and Philby and Maybach go there, and they're like, hey, we don't want a part of this anymore, we're going to give you the Stonecutter's Quill, just destroy the DHI server so that we won't have to do it anymore. So they go in, and they shove the pens in Maleficent's face, and it hurts her because Walt designed these pens like that the villains can't touch them. And then they steal the plans, they steal the pens, she finds her way back into the park, they chase her back into the park, she's trying to hurt them, Finn ends up fighting Jez, and then he goes all clear, and Jez keeps running through him while he's all clear, and then they kind of like walk together while he's all clear and spin around, and then Jez is Jess again, and I never understand how that happens, but I do now, and I'm really excited about it. And then Finn goes down the trash chute, and Maleficent follows him down the trash chute, and he escapes down the trash chute, they get Maleficent in a net, and then they go back to the Magic Kingdom, touch the Stonecutter's Quill to the blueprints for Disney World, the kingdom lights up, and they all live happily ever after.
Okay, so one of the things about this book is that I know as Kingdom Keepers fans, we all understand that while we love these books, there are some major continuity errors, and this book is definitely probably the one that has the biggest problem with that. Like, obviously there are individual continuity errors within the second book, and that's the one I think to the most, but the first book is almost like the pilot episode of a TV show, because, like, everything in the first book is kind of different from how it eventually turns out to be in the series, which makes some sense because this book was written in 2005 and the second one didn't come out until 2008 because it was supposed to be a standalone novel, which I do not believe now, but I'll get back to that later. There are some major continuity errors in this one, and it's kind of funny to read this book and think about what happens later in the series. Like, the biggest one is that Maybeck is a computer guy in this one. Maybeck is the computer guy in this one, and not only, I thought it was only said just like once, like just saying, oh, Maybeck is the computer guy. Oh no, Maybeck is doing all the DHI server stuff. Maybeck's figuring out how to cross them over. Maybeck knows everything about computers, and basically does everything that Philby does for the rest of the series, that Maybeck says for the rest of the series that he doesn't know anything about, and it's always like, English please with Philby, and so it's just, I love these books, but that was like frustrating to read that, but it was also funny. There's also with their families, like Finn's family is involved in this one a lot, which I didn't think they were. I thought it was just his mom. I didn't realize how much Finn's dad is in this book, and he sucks, by the way. He sucks just as much as he does in the Syndrome. But they're always having dinner with his family, and then his little sister is like not mentioned at all, but then his little sister is like in the rest of the books. Like, while the rest of the Keepers, it's not consistent with whatever family they do have, the one thing that's always mentioned in every book is Finn has a little sister. And where is she in this book? Also, when Jess gets saved and Finn, like, clears her, it says, like, oh, Amanda and Jess, like, could be twins. Like, not identical, but close to it. But Jess is pale with blonde hair, and Amanda's not. And it even says in this book, because Amanda, that's something that's consistent. Amanda is consistently described as having tan skin. I think it's in the Syndrome that she says she has like a Polynesian look to her. I think it says she had a black father and an Asian mother, or something like that combination. So, you know, Amanda is not white. Amanda is not white at all. And this book says she has tan skin. Like, all the books describe her, some of them more than others, that Amanda's not white. That's made very clear. And then Jess comes along and it's like she's got pale skin and freckles and like almost white blonde hair. And then they're like, but they could be twins. And I'm like, excuse me? The other fun thing about this book, besides the continuity error, which is like just funny because it's frustrating, but what is cool about this book, what I really enjoyed about rereading this one, is that you're watching them all become friends. And while you watch them get closer and closer over the course of the series, like, you know, in the first few books, they're just friends, and then they start to really care about each other, and then by the end of 7, Maybeck's like, I wouldn't trade you guys for anything, and then by the end of the second series, because at the start of the second series, they're like, well, we just have to move on to college, but at the end of the second series, it's like, you guys are my family, and you matter the most to me in the world. And they do grow to that through the whole series. But what's really cool about this first book is that you see them becoming friends throughout the book. So at the start, you know, none of them really want to do it, and they don't really care that much about each other. And then there's even passages in this book about how Finn's talking about how he had really started to like spending time with the other Keepers, and, you know, he really considered them his friends now. And you watch them start to care about each other more and start to behave like friends more. And it's really sweet, and it just makes my heart happy to watch them become friends that eventually become a family, because, you know, like, they're really not, they don't know each other at the beginning, and then, like, the second time they meet in VMK, they put their hands in the center and do the little, like, 1, 2, 3 break thing. And by the end of it, they're also excited to watch the kingdom light up together, and I just love watching them become friends throughout this book, and I'm really excited as I read the rest of the series to watch them become even closer, and that was probably the thing that I enjoyed most about rereading this book. I also enjoyed, as I said before, that these books suck me in like it's the first time every time I read them, and I love that feeling of like going back to the beginning of a favorite TV show or book series. Kingdom Keepers definitely has that big, huge, magical appeal to it, and they suck me in, and I read this thing in like 2 days because I didn't want to put it down, even though I've read it so many times already and I knew what was going to happen. It still excites me. So going back to what I said about how this was supposed to be a standalone novel, and I don't believe that anymore, holy crap, there were some things that I picked up on when I read this. Oh my gosh. So there's a part when Wayne is telling them the story about the stonecutter. I think he tells it to just Philby and Finn and Charlene. He might tell the whole group, I'm not sure. But at the end of him telling them this story, he says, I've been waiting a long time to tell you that story. And I was like, whoa. Now, that could just be that, like he said he needed them all together, and it took Finn a long time to get them all together. But at the same time, when I read the Return series, I was like, oh my god, that's how Wayne knew how to pick the 5 DHI hosts that he picked, because he met them in 1955, and like, whoa, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. And this quote from Wayne, whether it was intentional or not, totally fits in with that. And I freaked, because I was like, oh my god, Wayne knows them from 1955. And what I find cool about that is that if this truly was meant to be a standalone novel, and Ridley didn't plan that, what makes it so cool is that, like, these characters are taking on a life of their own. This story takes on a life of its own, and that's like the mark of a good story, is when it takes on a life of its own. And clearly that has happened here, because Wayne says, I've been waiting a long time to tell you that story, and then in much, much later, like 10 years later, we find out that Wayne met them in 1955. Holy crap! There's another moment where Finn encounters Maleficent underneath pirates, and he's like, are you the leader of the Overtakers? And she says, oh no, I am but a humble servant to she who lives within. And immediately I thought, Teodoma. And Teodoma doesn't come in until like book 6, I think, because up until then we think Chernobog is the leader of the Overtakers. But that line from Maleficent is very, very indicative of Teodoma. So that's another thing I love about rewatching TV series, rereading books, is that you pick up on all these little hints that allude to things that happen much later in the series. And again, I don't know if it was intentional, but it fits really, really well, and I freaked out. Oh god. The other fun thing about rereading the early Kingdom Keepers books is that they're so dated. Like, Hollywood Studios is still MGM, and they're using DSs to talk to each other in the second book. Which is funny to me because, like, technically they're 13, turning 14 in 2005 in this book. And then, that means that now in 2018 they'd be, like, coming close to 30. But then in book 7, when they're, like, 17, 18, end of high school, it's very much 2014. You can't say that it's before 2014 because Frozen is in book 7, so it has to be 2014 because when the book came out, because Frozen came out in 2013. So that puts them, like, just out of college right now in 2018. So it's funny, like, the timeline with that. And again, the other fun thing about rereading the first couple of Kingdom Keepers books is that they're 13. And they're so adorably 13. Like, it's so obvious that they're 13. And there are moments when I read it and I say, oh my god, they're 13. Why is this a thing? Like, Amanda's wearing hip huggers and, like, a short crop top. But at the same time, Finn and Dillard have that whole we don't like girls are ew still thing kind of going on. That's very much a young boy, like you would have at 13 kind of thing. But then Finn meets Amanda, and Amanda's kind of his first crush. And we see Finn going through a first crush, which is a very much 13-year-old kind of thing, and everything he says about Amanda, it's like, oh, he didn't like girls, but he liked Amanda. And then there are moments when Finn and Amanda are hanging out, and it says that, he's thinking about what he's gonna tell Dillard about this day. And I just found that so cute, that, like, Finn was thinking about what he was gonna tell Dillard about Amanda, because Dillard's his best friend. And in that way, they're very much 13, and things like that, and in the way they behave, and I just think they're adorable. And it's also so much fun, like, reading this, knowing what's gonna happen. Finn and Amanda are, like, just crushing on each other in this book, and like, how much happens for Finn and Amanda later on, and that coming in the third series, they are going to be married. And it makes it so much fun to see them in that crush phase in, like, 13 years old, and now, oh my god, they're gonna get married! And then, like, Wilby and Sharbeck aren't a thing yet in this book, but there are, like, little things, like, Willa and Philby have to work together a lot in this book, because they're the two brainy ones. And it also says that when Amanda comes over to Finn's house for dinner to be with him when he goes on VMK with the other keepers for the first time, that Willa and Philby show up at the same time, so you can kind of think maybe they were hanging out together, to go on VMK. It talks about Willa and Philby calling each other. There's a joke, where Maybeck is going off with Jez, and Charlene asks him if he had a hot date, and he said, not with you, I don't. And it's just so much fun, and that's what's fun about rereading any book series, but I find it especially fun with this because these are my favorite books. Speaking on that scene with Maybeck and Charlene, that is a glorious passage. There are so many funny passages in this book that I had forgotten about. There's one where Maybeck, he says, I gotta go, and Charlene's like, what's the problem? You got a hot date? And he says, not with you, I don't. And the other four boo his bad joke. And they're such 13-year-olds, and it's adorable. This book contains some of the famous Kingdom Keepers jokes, like, can you spell Google? How do you spell Aladdin? There's also some really great passages that I found. There's one where they're solving the anagram, and Charlene is looking for words in the anagram, and Charlene says men, and Willa goes, leave that to you. And I was like, oh my god. And then there's another passage when they're on the bus in their cast member outfits, and Amanda is there, and Amanda's mad at Finn because he thought she was the witch involved, and they're mad at each other, even though this is after the Halloween party, so Finn knows that it wasn't Amanda, but she's still mad at him for thinking that it was her. And then he's saying to her, like, you know, this is going to be really dangerous. If you're going to help us, you have to understand that. And Amanda says, I can take care of myself. And Willa and Charlene grin at that. And I found that to be the most adorable passage that I hadn't picked up on before, where Amanda's like, you know, I can handle myself. And Willa and Charlene are just like, because they're appreciating, like, Amanda, like, girl power, standing up for herself. And then it says Willa and Charlene, that Charlene's usually the most reluctant of the group, and Charlene's like, well, then it's decided, Amanda's gonna help us. And I found that the cutest thing, because I always think about, in like thinking about the Kingdom Keepers, thinking about like Amanda and Jess and Willa and Charlene hanging out, like the Keeper girls, but it's not something that's ever explicitly mentioned. So to have little hints at stuff like that, like in this passage, I just find adorable, and it makes my heart happy. So now I'd like to go into a segment that I'm going to do for every book that I reread called Fun Facts About the Keepers. And this will be just little tidbits of like one-liners, random facts of information thrown out in the books that I picked up on and marked down in my notes. Amanda has freckles. When Finn was 7, he walked across a restaurant to ask a smoker to put out their cigarette. He's so precious. Donnie is Maybeck's stage name. Willa likes swimming and archery. Amanda is a vegetarian. Wayne wears Mickey and Minnie slippers. Finn has a kitty cat. Mr. Whitman's name is Donald. Charlene is good at Scrabble. So before I go, a few more fun things about this book. Willa and Finn's friendship that I always appreciate in the later books, especially in 5, is very, very present in this first one, and I just think it's so cool. Like, when they're in the teepees and they meet Maleficent for the first time, Willa is holding Finn's hand, they smile at each other a lot, and it's just so sweet, and I love Willa and Finn. They're like brother and sister, and to see it, that it actually starts in this book, is so great to me. Oh my god, when Wayne meets Charlene and Philby and Finn for the first time crossed over, he buys them ice cream, and I thought that was the cutest thing. And like, Wayne is grandpa, Wayne is dad, and he buys them ice cream, and I love it. I also always forget that they were like blackmailed into this because none of them wanted to do it, and Wayne was like, well, if you go to sleep, I'm gonna cross you over, and you have to sleep at some point. So, and I was like, damn, Wayne, okay. Oh my god, so when Wayne is also talking to Finn and Philby and Charlene, he's telling them about how there was the hurricane that passed over, and they believe that the Overtakers used that like a battery to charge themselves, and Finn's like, that's crazy, and Philby's like, no, it's not crazy. And I was so proud of my boy, my son, Philby. I was like, ugh, Philby. The last thing, like, it's so much fun, like, fangirl Mrs. Whitman, the fact that there is no bigger Famanda shipper than Mrs. Whitman starts in this book, and I knew that, like, when Amanda comes over and she makes the cookies, but there's a scene that I forget about every time, and I'm assuming that I forget about it every time, because when I read it this time, I felt like I had never read it before, but, Amanda comes over for dinner to help Finn with VMK, or to go on VMK with Finn, and Mrs. Whitman is beside herself. She's like scrambling to make dinner. She's so excited that Amanda is there, and Finn was supposed to be grounded, but apparently now she doesn't care because he's got a girl there. And I cannot wait until the third series to see Mrs. Whitman's reaction to Finn and Amanda being married. Like, I know we might not get it because it's going to be about their kids and we're not going to be seeing them get engaged and stuff. It's going to be like post all of that. But at the same time, I just want to know how Mrs. Whitman reacted when Finn told her he was going to ask Amanda to marry him. Like, please, I need that in my life. Ridley, please tell me. So that's all I have about Disney After Dark. I had so much fun reading this book, like I always do. I'm so excited to reread the book series this year, and I'm really confident that I'm going to get through it this time because I've been thinking about the series a lot, things in the series that I had forgotten about, really sweet moments in the later books that I just can't wait to get to. I can't wait to reread The Syndrome. I can't wait to reread Shell Game. I can't wait to reread The Insider. I can't wait to reread Disney at Last, and so I'm going to push through. I'm going to be doing a video like this for every one of the books that I reread, so I hope you enjoy that. I'm getting ready to start Disney at Dawn. I haven't started it yet. I've just been involved in other things today, like doing other Kingdom Keepers related things, and I haven't felt like reading. But I am really excited to read Disney at Dawn because it is my favorite book in the series, and I love it a lot, and I always love it when I read it. So that's it for me today. If you liked this video, please remember to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. All links are in the description below. I'll see you next time, Keepers. Bye!